Hey there, Miles Pitcher, Superior Lending. I want to send out to you guys our mortgage tip for the week. Hope you're doing great. We just got finished being a guest on the Utah Real Estate Podcast. That'll be coming out in a few weeks. I'm excited to share that with you. We're going to be talking about jumbo loans like we've done on our tips before here. Okay, we've had a lot of movement in rates. So take a look here that right over here, this big red bar was on Wednesday. The Federal Reserve came out and spoke. They said, number one, they're not changing the Fed funds rate right now, but they're watching closely and they may move up their schedule to start raising the Fed fund rates. Why are they doing that? Inflation, it was a big reason. And because of those words about inflation, boy, that's what made rates get worse. That big red bar is rates getting worse on us. So that's number one. Number two, then the Fed also talked about that they are preparing to, at some point in the near future, begin tapering their purchase of mortgage-backed securities. You've probably heard me mention it before. The Fed is taking money and going out into the open market and buying mortgage-backed securities. And this creates a artificially lower interest rate. So as they start tapering off doing that, we're going to see rates rise. As inflation is happening, rates are going to rise. So you can see what effect that had yesterday. We've recovered some of that back today with the green bar you can see there. Rates are still phenomenal. But if you have clients that are on the fence, I encourage them to get moving and take advantage of where rates are right now, because all signs are pointing to rates moving higher in the near future. Okay, let me talk to you guys today about closing cost options. So in the past, it was very common for an agent to ask me, hey Miles, how much do I need for closing costs? And we'd say $5,000, $6,000, whatever it would be, depending on the purchase price. And they'd go to the seller and say, hey, we know this home costs $400,000. Can we raise the purchase price to $406,000, and then you guys contribute $6,000 to closing costs? So the seller still nets out the same amount. That worked great in the past, still works great today, but the appraisal has to support that increase in purchase price. Right now in our market, we are already pushing and stretching the purchase price. So I have a few rare occasions where this is working, but for the most part, this option is kind of dead right now. But I want you to be aware of it. And I'll back up. We're really talking today about the options on how to handle closing costs, especially when a client needs to use their down payment money to cover an appraisal shortage. So what can you do so that they can cover the appraisal shortage and you have other alternatives on handling the closing costs? So the old way that's really not currently happening is to have the seller pay them. Let's go to option two. So I want you to be aware as a real estate agent that you can, as long as your broker allows it, you can contribute any part of your commission or all of your commission towards the closing costs for the client. Remember, down payment and closing costs are different. You do not have to be related. You do not have to know anything about this client to be able to help cover their closing costs. And it just requires a letter from your broker that goes to the title company, and then they can add this on as a credit on the closing disclosure. Conversation for another day is how can you use your commission towards someone's down payment? There's really only one unique situation where that can happen, and you have to be related to the client. But covering closing costs, totally a doable thing. Yeah. All right. Third option, and this one we're seeing a little more often, is that the client takes maybe an eighth or a quarter worse on interest rate, which really doesn't move their payment that much. But in doing so, it creates a credit that we're able to give to help with closing costs, either in part or in full. And this really is awesome. And I mentioned here that it's also a great option for clients who are going to be in homes for a shorter period of time. The longer that you live in the home or plan on living in the home, you want to get the lowest rate possible. But if your horizon on owning that home is shorter, it's okay to take a higher interest rate and get the closing costs built into the interest rate, essentially. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. Had a fabulous client who, she's an older lady, and she was selling her home in Orem. She was going to get a really nice chunk of money off of that, but they wanted to buy this 55 and older patio home first, get her moved in, and she had enough to come in with 20% down. I was working with her and her son, and we knew that they would have a large amount of money coming from the sale of the old home later, once they fixed it up. But we helped her buy the home. She took a higher interest rate so that I could give her a credit and I'd cover all of her closing costs. And then once her old home sells, they're going to come in and pay down that mortgage, and I think they'd be left with like a $20,000 balance on it. And then they'll shortly be able to pay that off in the future. But since that mortgage is getting paid off in the near future, they were really happy for us to pay the closing costs, and they were not that sensitive about the interest rate, right? Because it's going to be paid off or reduced really fast in the future. Pretty cool way of doing things. It worked out fabulous for them. Just meant that all the money they were bringing to the table went towards down payment, and I took care of the closing costs. So I hope these options help you guys know some different ways of helping your clients get into a home. Like, I'll give you another example. I had a call from an agent this morning and said, hey, I have clients that have some down payment money saved up, but we are afraid we're going to have to use that for appraisal shortage. So they therefore are going to be lacking down payment and closing cost money. So we're helping them find some 100% loan options. Great, that takes care of the down payment. And then we will price the interest rate just a little bit higher, and we'll be able to throw in and help reduce their closing costs, and we'll have the agent kick in a little bit also. And maybe they'll have some left over depending on where the appraisal comes in at. But a great way for them to be able to get in a home and take care of those closing costs in a different way than out of pocket. Let me know if you have any questions on things. Every week I say it, we want to make sure every client knows what every fee is, and we want to make sure that every client is presented multiple options on their loans. They should not just see, here's a plain old 30-year fix. They should see options depending on what is happening. A mortgage is a strategy. It's not a commodity. Hope you guys have a great week. Miles Pitcher, Superior Lending.